Okay, we're ready to read Every Last Girl and carry on discovering what worked for Educate Girls campaign. So we'll start from a very few to a great many. Our campaign and recruitment events worked. In fact, we grew from 140 volunteers back in 2009 to over 1,000 in just 3 years. It surprised us that we managed to find so many people prepared to step forward. And as the numbers grew, they became a team. And as the team grew, it became like an army of gender champions. And that army became our Team Balika, our team for the girl child. But naysayers still existed. We can't find people to work for us in these villages. And just a minute. And we are the government, one district education officer warned us. Nobody believed that the early success we had experienced, finding people to align with our mission and give their time to finding girls, would really be something we could deliver at scale. And it wasn't just the government officials in the district who had a hard time believing in us. New potential recruits would challenge this approach. They too questioned us. It might work for you in Pali or in Jalore, but it won't be possible in my district, they would assert. Perhaps it was unreasonable to expect people to join us. It was hard to make an argument to the government official who didn't believe us, or to the new recruit in a fresh district who knew their community better than us. Because, in a way, this did defy logic. On occasions, I doubted myself and our approach and thought that perhaps this time we wouldn't succeed. But I listened to my heart, and every time we did succeed. It was incredibly hard work, but our team Balika was growing really, really fast. There was no rational reason why people were signing up in such numbers. But I left the rational and lent into the unreasonable. My instinct that this was the right approach came from the fact that I had personally experienced what it felt like to have someone outside of my family get me back to school. My aunt Mahe had been like a team Balika in my life. Why did she help me? She wasn't a social worker, she wasn't a teacher, and she was also not family. She was a friend, someone who stood beside me and supported me when I needed it. My time at school had been disrupted. People had lost their confidence in my education when I was out of school for over 3 years. I often struggled with traumatic memories from my earlier childhood, and when things got too overwhelming, I had to flee. And as I fled school, my parents despaired and reverted to default conclusions that as a girl, I should forget about education and get married. They even lined a husband up for me, a divorcee with 4 children. They saw me as a problem, and the solution was marriage. I shudder when I think that could have been my life. Had my aunt not declared that I was not a problem and that the solution for me was education. She was there for me. She battled with these traditional views and battled with my parents. She knew me and knew my mind. She understood my potential and was prepared to swim against the tide with me. First, she persuaded me that I should go back to school. Then she persuaded my parents to support me with this decision. And then, as time went on, she was the one who encouraged me to study even harder and apply to university in the UK. She got me back into the classroom, back to my studies, and I will forever be grateful to her for that. I now wanted this for every girl in every village, a friend, an advocate, an army of Mahis. This was my story and a large part of why I am here today. And as we grew, I started to realize that it was not just my story. Everywhere we went, people understood that what we were trying to do and told us about their own experiences and their own lives. They all had their own deeply personal reasons to fight for girls, and they explained this through their stories. We heard stories of overcoming family pressures, seeing siblings denied an education, experiencing how damaging illiteracy was to their mother or older sister. We heard stories of harsh in laws, of unwanted girls, and then positive stories of going to school, of having a voice, of making progress in life. We then started to see that after working with us for a while, it was their storytelling that created the change in their village, the story of their life to date. And the future story they wanted to write for their village was why they stood up and joined us. It was their personal experience that I saw reflected in every member of Team Balika. In each and every one of them, I saw the same kindness and sense of giving and purpose that I had seen in my aunt. Intrinsic motivation. The reason every Team Balika member worked so hard stemmed from deeply personal lived experience, a motivation to change their own village, and in doing so, change themselves. Why did I get back on the plane from the US in 2004? This was my country and my problem. Similarly, we discovered that this is what motivated our volunteers. My village, my problem, and I am the solution. I will become a team Balika. This was their new rallying cry. It might have been Anisha who first said this to me, or Kamlesh, Nadia Banu, or Salma. Any number of our past or current volunteers might have been the ones to make the statement and inspire this powerful mantra. And over time, it underpinned everything we did. My village, my problem. And I am the solution became our Team Balika motto. It's our job to make people aware because it is our village. The development of our village lies in our hands, our volunteer told me. And he went on to explain, when I see the children in the morning, they call me Sir. That is my identity now. Nothing makes me happier than seeing children learn because of me. People see me in the village and greet me. I now feel respected and that my work is important. We have to make the change ourselves, said Anisha. We cannot leave this to God. Our team Balika were giving back a lot, working incredibly hard. But invariably, they were quick to acknowledge what they were gaining for themselves. For Anisha Kumari and other young women and men, the role of a village volunteer came with dramatically increased mobility and social interactions, not just through the work, but through the network of other volunteers who they trained with and shared peer support with. This was a hugely motivating factor. Anisha had been given certain freedom by her father, but was still quite tied to her home, always working with her father at home or in the fields after school, rarely socializing with girls her age and studying remotely. Until she joined us at Educate Girls. Akelapan, loneliness, is very often cited by young girls as a deep feeling that has an impact on their lives, their confidence, and mental health. Working with us was somewhat of a cure. Our young women were making friends through work. While the boys and young men played cricket whenever they wanted, many girls reported feeling criticized, frowned upon for playing or getting together with their friends. They felt they could only be at home. As her brother picked up his cricket bat after school every day, Anisha picked up a broom after school. They were even stored in the same place, leaning up against the wall, his and hers, bat and broom. But volunteering with us allowed girls to legitimately play with the children, be out of the home, and engaged with the world outside. Babulal, an inspiring young man, had a similar experience. He was housebound because of a physical disability and had very few people in his village, and in a way empathized with the situation of girls whose lives were so full of limitations. When he joined us, it was the first time he had left his village and traveled to the nearby town of Raj Samand for a training program. His understanding of what it feels like to be dismissed, held back, and confined to home was born out of experiences so similar to our girls. His enthusiasm for the work and the sense of belonging was infectious. With other volunteers, I made friends, friends I had never before. As we trained and supported them through our workshops, meetings, and mentoring, our volunteers were bolstered by the skills and confidence they were building. Our training and their action was working. By going door to door, standing up in meetings and presenting, and speaking to government officials and school leaders, something big was starting to happen, personally for every one of them. Team Balika members reported a newfound self assurance that enabled them to speak in front of crowds. There was almost always a before and an after story of being shy, feeling invisible, and then after educate girl workshops and door to door survey, realizing their passion through artwork and discovering their voice. It, volunteering with Educate Girls, has given me a sense of self, elevated my stature in the village and even at the block and district levels. There's no village in my block where people don't recognize me. Farzana, a fiery team member who I find it difficult to believe was once too shy to join our district meetings and speak up, said this. She can now command a crowd of 1,000 people and persuade parent after parent to enroll their girls in school. If there's a new daughter in law in the village who wants to continue studying, the community contacts me for guidance. Today, the people in my village look up to me as a leader, and that's a responsibility I take pride in. The transformation has been the most fulfilling part of my journey. Farzana had managed to complete her ninth grade exams, but only passed her 10th after an 8-year gap. She studied as an adult for her 10th because she wanted to work for girls, because she wanted to join our team. Farzana was so driven to join Educate Girls and get girls in her community into education that she herself went back to school. She had once been the only girl in her village who traveled to the next village to go to school, which took a total of 5 hours traveling each day. And now, with her 10th pass qualification in hand, she is a local leader and a respected colleague. As I met with more and more of our volunteers, and as the team was growing, their experiences took me right back to San Francisco and the evolution of my own career out of the private sector and into nonprofits and my personal journey as a young woman. For me, it had also started with volunteering. I knew deeply what it meant to give my time to a social cause and what volunteering had done for me. work in San Francisco was lonely. Hayes Valley in 1995 was a rough place. I lived just off the 101 ramps that was later torn down by the city, helping Hayes Valley re-emerge from its rough history to its new and current gentrified status. People on our street would leave their car doors unlocked and a clear sign on the windshield saying so to prevent thieves from breaking the windows to steal the car radio. Windows were obviously more important or costly than radios. This was not something that had an impact on me as I have never learned to drive, but it was a sign of the tensions in our neighborhood back when I lived there. From my tiny studio apartment, I would walk every day down Van Ness Street to catch a bus to Caltrain station and cram into a train to Santa Clara. If you missed it, you had to wait a full hour for the next one. And then it took an hour to reach Silicon Valley. After that, I had to take a bus to my office, a bus that took me to a tiny cubicle next to teams of people coding all day. I was one of the only non coders and one of the only people in my 20s, so it was a lonely existence. I had no friends in the city. I always got home too late to socialize. Nor did I have like minded friends at work. I was new to the company and new to San Francisco and America, and Akelapan engulfed me too. So after 8 months, I cracked and begged my boss to allow me to stay in San Francisco 1 day a week and take up a volunteering role, which he duly granted, much to my surprise. My first stop was the Yellow Pages. I scored the list of nonprofits with international in their titles. I wrote to a short list, and rather than follow some onerous process of form filling, I immediately joined an organization that worked in community development globally, including India, because they were the ones who phoned me up. In one conversation, I was hooked. Their mission spoke volumes given my heritage and experiences growing up in India. At their office in the Mission District, I met a group of young, like minded volunteers, all around the same age as me. I had an immediate friend circle, peers who wanted to do the same thing as me, brought together by purpose, by international development. I made friends with Becca, who had worked in Guatemala and had just returned to the US. Tasha, who had spent a year abroad in Madurai, now wanting to help raise awareness and support in the US. Rachel and Martha were from England and passionate about social justice around the world. The work was meaningful. Figuring out how to raise funds to help women in South America, buy sewing machines, or set up a dairy cooperative in rural India or a project in the Philippines, this is what got me out of bed in the morning. Eventually, I quit my dot-com job to join the social sector full time. Things then began to change, and I started my journey to where I am today. Volunteering was a perfect platform to gain exposure and build the skills that have shaped me and my work over the years. It taught me how to build a network that follows me today. I learned the workings of the nonprofit sector, how to build and work in teams, problem solving, maximizing resources, and personally finding my own voice, decision making ability, and leadership. And this is what we gave our team Balika: exposure, network, and skills. Their journey mirrored my own. And in all of this, I started to weave together their stories and mine into the makings of a movement. We arrived at a movement. I don't feel like I work alone in this movement. I loved how Farzana used the term. A movement is essentially a delicate balance between spontaneity and organization. It is about each individual and their own motivation, but also about the collective, and this is what we began to see. As our team Balika attended regular meetings, traveled out of their villages for training, and were supported through our help desk and connected to each other, they started to see they were no longer alone. There was someone just like them in the next village and the next across their whole district. The sense of belonging to a tribe was strong, and we worked hard to provide the glue that helped them sorry that helped them stick together. This group of colleagues, indeed friends, benefited every team Balika member individually. But in coming together, bringing a spontaneous act into collective action, each individual joined together to become a movement. There was energy, power, and inspiration in this coming together. They helped and supported each other. And as the news of their work spread, the reputation and respect they were gaining for themselves as local leaders and as educate girls also grew. Everything we did just got bigger. We had bigger recruitment events, larger training programs, and each year our annual Foundation Day celebration grew and grew. A sense of collective action for villages and blocks drove our team Balika until they could see that together they were having an impact on an entire district. But this was a quietly powerful movement, operating with sensitivity and tenacity across the thousands of villages where we worked. Our logo of the little girl with red pigtails was emblazoned on their shirts, their hats, their bags. Nothing fancy, no coat of arms, no acronyms. Just the little girl like a uniform and a badge of honor. Whenever people saw me with that bag, they would instantly recognize that I was part of Educate Girls, and that made me feel proud, Farzana told me. And this was just what we could see on the outside. More important was what they carried inside: purpose, respect, a shared community goal. They started to look like a team, but critically, they felt like a movement, like they were part of something much, much more. Putting purpose before everything else is an incredibly powerful way of working. Valuing the mission foremost ensures true engagement in community development, and it was clear from all the work we did to listen to and support our volunteers that they really were motivated by educating girls. Was it unreasonable of us to expect this movement to evolve? Was it unreasonable of us to have had hope and persistence, to believe in the power of local voices and trust that enough people would come forward? Or had we actually just seized upon a natural desire for a new order that just needed a channel? Whatever the logic, we did it. We proved the district education officer who said we wouldn't find volunteers wrong. And we proved skeptical new recruits wrong as we expanded beyond Pali and Jalore, from Ajmer to Udaipur, from Bhilwara to Sirohi, from Jaipur to Rajasamand, and then in 2015 over the border beyond Rajasthan and into Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, and most recently Bihar. We did find people. We recruited them, trained them, brought them together as a movement that started to rewrite the story for girls. Adapting to a world that remained fundamentally unequal for girls was not a solution I or any of our volunteers could accept. Those who joined me on this journey were relentless in their pursuit to adapt the world to them. Some thought we were unreasonable. But in our volunteers, we found tenacious young people prepared to be just that, unreasonable. By 2017, we had a movement of over 11,000 village volunteers and were working in 13,000 villages and were ready to dramatically scale up our work, ready to find every last girl. We were growing. And this was an impressive scale for a community based nonprofit. But with my growing understanding of the scale of the problem for girls and my knowledge that we now knew what to do about it, my ambition and impatience got the better of me. And I just knew we still had to move faster and not just grow at the current pace. Moving at Speed, Chapter 7. If I were given 1 hour to save the planet, I would spend 59 minutes defining the problem and 1 minute resolving it. Albert Einstein. I imagine 11,000 passionate volunteers and team members navigating dusty roads in and out of the villages, scaling the rolling hillsides of Rajasthan to make sure every hamlet is counted. They have notebooks, pens, and mobile phones. They ask questions, listen, learn, and the stories they hear become the data that we analyze. Using GPS tracking, we are able to resource plan, allocate people, and set targets. We can support the teams better and also build accountability systems for our growing field teams and volunteers and reduce risk for their managers. Technology was enhancing our work. We knew that we had the right information and networks, but I still had a growing sense of frustration that there was untapped potential and that we were going too slow. The village lottery. Like ghosts, they walked down the side of the road, caked in white dust from the construction site, carrying oversized kadhais on their heads, weighed down with gravel. This was back-breaking work in the scorching sun, and I only saw women with their saris hitched up and their dupattas across their mouths to stop them from inhaling the toxic clouds as they built the new national highway from Udaipur to Ahmedabad. These were the women of Jhadol block, where time had stood still. Cars very rarely reached the village we were visiting. There were perhaps four motorbikers, bikes, but most people moved about on bicycle or foot, making the slow 4 kilometer walk to the highway perhaps only once a week to then catch a tempo to the larger village 10 kilometers to the east. There, they could find a small market and a branch of the State Bank of India. But here, there was nothing. A large number of the men in the village had migrated to cities in search of work, and the women were generally employed through the Manrega scheme, constructing this enormous new highway. Agriculture was the only other work in the village, but all small scale, and only a few of the village members eked out any profit from their tiny strips of land. Subsistence farming was the norm. A small and yet dispersed village. Here we found a large number of out of school girls when we conducted our door to door internal survey in 2017. Just over the hill, on the other side of the National Highway construction site, was a similar sized village. Now, this other village had around 100 households, families, mostly from the Dhakar or merchant community, who had a reputation for being good with money, salesmen historically. There was little migration from this other village. The soil was good, irrigation was easy, with a good water table level, and despite an increasingly volatile climate, the crops thrived. Wheat, gram, garlic, mustard, even peanuts. They were no longer really merchants. The village industry was agriculture and some daily labor work. But not many of the inhabitants of the village had to look outside it for work. It had its own shop, and there was a small secondary school close by. The community here was well known locally for its mirror work, and this provided another source of income for the village families. It was also part of our door to door survey, but according to our list, all the girls here were going to school. We had been collecting door to door data for nearly 10 years, and over time, we had become more and more focused on supporting our team Balika and field teams with the tools we speed up their work and the numbers they needed to make decisions. Decisions that would help the program become increasingly effective and help us find more girls. They were already equipped with GPS mapping and a mobile phone app that helped them plan and collect data and help us resource plan and ensure accountability. But we had never really zoomed out and looked at all our data with a different level of analysis. But this year, inspired by some deep analysis we were doing with the evaluators of one of our district projects, we were indeed looking at all our data differently. And we realized that the magnitude of these numbers was starting to tell us a story. Specifically, we started to see a cluster effect. On the south side of the NH road construction, we were finding a lot of outer school girls across the villages, hundreds in fact. On the north side, far, far fewer. A handful in one or two villages. What we saw was a geographical lottery. In this particular block, if you were born on one side of the highway, you might go to school. On the other side, you would likely not. Where you were born could dictate everything, particularly if you were born a girl. As an organization, Educate Girls was also playing and losing at this lottery as we continued unwittingly to allocate resources to villages where we found very few outer school girls, sometimes none. There was, of course, a celebration when we found that all girls were in school, but we knew that there were villages where the opposite was the case, and we needed to get to those villages a lot faster. As we rolled out our program, we could find a Team Balika member in every village, allocate a paid field coordinator to every 10 villages, conduct a full door to door survey of the whole district, and run regular meetings. Then, in some villages, all girls were in school. We put the same team and effort into both these villages. In one village, we found 30 out of school girls, in the other, none. There had to be a different way, a faster way to find the villages where the problem was most acute. Getting there faster. It was now September 2017, and after my visit to Jhadol block, I had taken a break from field operations for a few weeks and was in the US to shortly join the chaos or excitement, depending on how you look at it. That is the UN General Assembly in New York. I had flown from India via the West Coast to catch up with my old friends in San Francisco. It felt great to be back, but I had a lot on my mind. San Francisco also happened to be the home of the advisory data analytics and research organization, I didn't cite, who were conducting the evaluation. I mentioned of our work in the district of Bhilwara. It had been quite a challenging year so far as we simultaneously expanded into new districts and coped with the pressure of the Bhilwara project. We were now supporting and mentoring an 11,000 strong Team Balika army, and on top of everything, in just a few months, we would be celebrating our 10th Foundation Day. We wanted to celebrate by throwing a really big event and write a decadal impact report. Idensight's lofty, air conditioned office was a far throw from the dust and heat where I had been working in Rajasthan just a week earlier, and also far from where I had lived in Hayes Valley or 7th and Minna for that matter. But as I sat and waited but as I sat and waited for Buddy Shah, the founder, I was put at ease by a wily dog who had decided to sit next to me in the meeting room and nudge my elbow with his long, wet nose. On my way, my phone informed me as the next message buzzed on my thigh and surprised the dog. We had planned the meeting in order to take a deeper look at our data and discuss learning from the recent evaluation results. We only had a year left on the 3-year funding contract and still had 50% of our goal to reach. We needed to see if the numbers could tell us anything about how to accelerate our progress in the final year. As Buddy bustled into the meeting room, pulled up a chair, and joined me at the table, the meeting started to go in a very different direction as I shared some of my disappointment at what I saw as the slow pace of our work. I have done some calculations based on our progress over the last decade, Buddy, and if we carry on at this rate, too many girls will miss out an education. We will lose this generation, I explained. It's just too slow. Buddy paused. He didn't immediately make any suggestions, but posed the question: what is your biggest problem to solve? Now, Buddy should really be addressed as Dr. Neil Shah, if I am to use his correct title. It is not often that you meet a qualified physician who also has an economics degree and a list of affiliations that include Harvard University, Harvard Kennedy School, MIT's, JPAL, the World Bank, and the list goes on. To complement his title, Buddy was as elegant and handsome as his stature demanded. He sits at the intersection of data science and human development. And if anyone can integrate the two successfully, it is Buddy. And he is a great one for asking the right question. It's quite simple, Buddy, I replied, and then paused in order to compose myself. There are just so many girls in India who aren't going to school, but we know they are no longer everywhere. We seem to be carpet bombing with our program, but the problem is uneven. There are villages where all the girls are now going to school, but then there are hotspots where we are finding many, many out of school girls in one village. These are the clusters we need to find quicker. I want to find every last girl who's being denied an education. Once we find her, we know what to do to get her into school and learning. But my problem is there are just so many girls and not enough time and not enough money. And it's such a huge country. Perhaps what I really need to know is where to look. Okay, we'll stop over here today. I thought I saw Myra Jalan in the group of listeners today, but I think she is logged out. So it's encouraging to see an intern with us today. And if anybody would like to share anything here, it's been a very interesting chapter and a half that we read today. Pushpita is here. Yes, Pushpita.
Ma'am, good evening,
Good
everyone.
evening.
I'm sorry, ma'am, I joined a little late today.
No problems.
Ma'am, yes, for me today, the most, I think, the takeaway or the image that will stay with me from today's reading is that of the bat and the broom. Uh,
Yes, yes,
that was really, I think, remarkable and evocative, and
absolutely.
the way
Yeah.
it was portrayed, I mean, it's really heartrending.
Absolutely. And I think this is something, this portion of the chapter, I think reading it aloud to children would really make a difference. I really would want some children to be listening to these, and especially children to realize how they are discriminated against, and also how boys have always had it easier than girls in most parts of India. So I think that would be appreciated by both of them. There's another hand up, but that seems to be the note taker. So I don't know if it is a person raising a hand there, Manisha. Manisha, is that somebody's hand raised, or is it?
Ma'am, I cannot see any hand raised.
Oh, there is a white hand raised. Sandeep's note taker otter. So that
Ma'am,
is what. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that's okay. So if there's anything else that anyone would like to say, otherwise, I think we have 2 minutes more, and I think we can reflect on what we have read just now. Akanksha is here. Akanksha, you've been coming regularly, have you? I Akanksha.
Yes, she
Ma'am,
is regular.
Yes,
ma'am,
Manish. Meenakshi
I would,
ma'am
I
wants
would
to say
like, I would
something.
like Akanksha to speak about these things because she came to Bandarjoot and
Okay.
went around, the village,
Hmm.
and probably she has some experience which she would like to share.
Absolutely. Yes, Akanksha, we would love to hear from you.
Good evening and Jai Hind, everyone.
Good
Thank
evening.
you, Meenakshi ma'am, for saying my name. I was also going to share my experience as I was with
Hmm.
the Jagmatski Shori project to meet the girls there in Bandarjoot. And
Okay.
I that I relate with the reading when
Right.
the author said that there were many people coding there, but her interest was in volunteering or non-profit organization. So I
Right.
really liked interacting with the girls, and there were also many girls who didn't get to into the school after 10th or like after
Okay.
for 5th also.
Right.
So yeah, I also had many nice
Mm.
experience with them.
Yeah. So that's what we keep saying right through as we read the chapters, the various chapters, we find that the girls who were able to be, contacted by Educate Girls, they were lucky. Or there are other organizations in the country which does go around trying to source students and bring them to school to study. And these are luckier children because there are many, many in our country who really need this kind of an opportunity to study. And I think wonderful work being done here, and it needs all our appreciation. Maybe we should write to them also, write to Educate Girls, and express our appreciation for the work that they have been doing. That would be lovely. All right, so we are done with our time today, and we shall finish today's session here. Meet you all next Thursday, and it would be nice to see Pushpita ma'am and Akanksha ma'am. If you can motivate some more students to join our reading session on Thursday, that would be lovely.
Yes,
All
ma'am.
right. See you next Thursday. Bye bye. Good evening, everybody.